What is in my existence right now is this thing, this drum I'm beating called diabetes. And I want it to be health.
But so let's change the conversation a little bit and make it accurate. What is, we just asked them.
Right.
With you sitting right there listening.
And I said I feel embarrassed.
It's all right. But what is well-being. What was is diabetes. Now, we know that's tricky, but think about it. Can you follow us when we say, since we stand in the vortex where everything that you have put is, can you feel why we would call anything that's manifested old news? Old news, because what's in the vortex is the new vibration. This is really where it's at. So what you've got to figure out is how you can feel the nowness of the wellness rather than the old news of the diabetes.
And standing in the now, this is the tricky part for me because there's all this medication involved and there's a fear of putting it down.
Don't put it down. But are you in the process of medicating yourself every waking hour?
No.
What percentage?
Nothing, yeah. Not that long.
That argument doesn't hold water, does it?
I guess not very well. Not very well.
Pretty good excuse, but we're not buying it.
Well, it's just difficult to stop beating the drum, I guess.
Fun to watch you argue for your limitations.
Isn't it?
Because none of it, in other words, we get it that what is has your attention. We're just trying to convince you that it doesn't have to have all of your attention. And that if you would give more of your attention than you have been giving to the vortex, not to solving diabetes, but to being in the vortex. Why? Because it feels good. Being in the vortex, because that's where clear ideas are, and that's where you feel good, and that's where you breathe more deeply. In other words, what trips so many of you up is that you have a condition or an issue that you want to be present in every conversation. And we don't want it to be present in any conversation, except maybe the brief conversation that you have to have with someone about the medication that's a really small percentage of your life. And we know there are so many people that have for so long been shining the only spotlight on the manifestation stuff around. And so as humans, you talk about what has manifested, you talk about why it is manifested, you talk about who was involved in it being manifested, you talk about how this manifestation relates to every other manifestation on the planet. You sort your manifestations into piles. These are good piles, these are not so good piles. You talk about whose fault it is that those piles even exist. You gather together armies to blow up piles. You put philosophies together. You section off your libraries and your bookstores into different categories of things that are important. And in all of this sorting and sifting of all of this reality, you give yourself the distorted viewpoint that what is the most important thing when it isn't. It isn't. It was the bouncing off place for what's over here that hardly gets any of your attention because that's got all of your attention. Even though if you would look over here, you would feel great. We want somebody to explain to us in a way that will make some sort of reasonable sense how it is possible that you would want to look at the old news instead of the new news, or at the news that doesn't feel good instead of the news that does feel good. In what world have you been oriented to do that? Why would you do that?
There's no good reason.
There isn't a good reason that you've been doing it.
Right.
We're just doing a really good sales job because we want you to accept the reality of this vibrational reality. We want you to accept the realness of it because we can feel the vividness of who you are there. And we know that in the blink of an eye, we know that from one thought to the next, that you could come into full harmony with all of that power, where you would allow the cells of your body to find the realignment that they know how to make, that is being hindered by your attention to what is. So let us ask all of you some questions just to keep this ball rolling here a little bit. You have physical bodies. We know you agree with that. The physical bodies that you walk around in are physical in nature, in the sense that you're tangible and you have stuff that can be recognized and felt. In other words, there is a realness about this physical world that is satisfying to explore. Let's start in another place. To be source energy, non-physical, and to extend into the physical was a really exhilarating idea. Every one of you said, ooh, tangible. visceral, physicalness of creation out there on the leading edge. I want that feeling, smelling, hearing, tasting, touching, physical experience. So here you are. Then you said, being the eternal being that I am, I'm going to explore this leading edge environment, and I'm going to ask it to be even better. So I'm going to explore it and know what I don't want and ask for what I do want. And there will be a vibrational version of it that will precede its manifesting change. With us so far?
Yes.
And now, what so many of you are saying is, but I'm so accustomed and so hung up on and so enamored by, so distracted by the physicalness of my world that I'm going to opt out of the expansion part just for a little while, and I'm just going to lazily observe what is. And we say that's where it derails. So then you say, oh, well, when I am sick, I ask for wellness, but it's hard for me to find the feeling of the wellness because the feeling of the sickness is so easy for me to read, so easy for me to interpret. And we say, it's only easy for you to interpret because you've been interpreting it. That's like saying, I continue to do it because I've been doing it. Well, why do you do that? Well, because I've been doing it. Well, but do you like it? No, I hate it. Well, why do you keep doing it? Because I've been doing it. Well, could you do something else? Well, probably, but it's just easy to keep doing what I've been doing. And so we come into your experience and we explain to you the laws of the universe, and we explain to you how vibration precedes everything, and how the vibration of that which you are is always the leading edge of that which you are, and that when you don't keep up with the leading edge of that which you are, you feel the drag of not keeping up, that some call stuck, but it's just the drag of not keeping up. So sickness, no matter what the label, is just the drag of not keeping up. Being ornery, that's just the drag of not keeping up. Being overwhelmed, that's just the drag of not keeping up. You are genius creators exposed to the most leading edge plethora of opportunities to expand that has ever existed anytime, anywhere. And you have created a vortex that is moving faster than anything that we've ever witnessed in all of creation. And the biggest complaint that we hear from you is, I'm not keeping up. And you know how we hear it? I'm worried about this. I'm discouraged about this. And we say, well, you're just not keeping up with the real thought of who you are. You're holding on to old news. You're just not keeping up with the real thought. So what is the real thought of who you are? And you say, well, I can't find it. And we say, you don't need to find it. Just stop thinking the old thought. That really is our message here. You don't have to find and articulate the new thought. You just have to stop keeping the old thought that isn't working so alive and so well. Stop beating the drum of that. When you describe yourself as someone who has diabetes, that is not helpful to you. You want to start describing yourself as, I'm on my way to something wonderful, or I have a vortex of creation where all is well. And we know there are some people you might want to say that to, and some people you might not want to say that to. But there's nobody that you want to say, I've got diabetes. There's nobody that you want to say, I don't have enough money. There's nobody that you want to say, my relationship isn't working, or I don't have enough work. You want to stop saying those things, because every time you say them, you keep them activated, which keeps you from going into the vortex where the improvements are. You see what we're getting at? Yeah. It's really an interesting thing. Esther and Jerry were laughing about it at lunch, that Abraham is going to such extreme as to smear Esther's lipstick all over her face in order to convince you that no thought is really the way to tiptoe into the vortex and begin the practicing of the vibration of who you are.
Okay, thank you very much.
Do you believe that the vortex exists?
Yes, I do.
Do you believe that you are well in the vortex?
Yes, I do.
Do you have the power of focusing around the diabetes?
Yes.
Do you have to focus around the diabetes 100% of the time in order to go into the vortex occasionally?
No.
Do you have to go into the vortex constantly and steadily in order to get improvement? If you go into the vortex just a larger percentage of the time than you have been, will you see evidence of improvement?
Yes.
So going to the vortex because it feels good is a pretty easy thing to do.
Yes.
And hanging around in there a little longer will become increasingly easier.
Yes.
And improvements to your physical condition and every other condition must therefore follow.
Yes.
So is there any downside to blissfully going into the vortex? Isn't it worth just gambling that it might work?
Yes.
Oh, I went to this workshop and they challenged me to stop thinking negative thought by just quieting my mind. They teased me with the idea of going into the vortex, but I don't know if it's worth it. They say it's a big price to pay. Joy is a big price to pay. For well-being, for rendezvousing with lovers, for being all that you've been born to be, of aligning up with the energy that creates worlds, of tapping into the creativity that's all swirling there and waiting for you to be so inspired that your day just unfolds with one good thing after another as you delight in the rendezvousing of the physical manifestations of what's buzzing around in your vortex. We know. It's a big price to pay.
If it's so easy and wonderful, why do we make it so hard?
You tell us.
I don't know.
We think it's one simple reason. We think you believe in reality and you don't believe in vibrational reality. We think that reality, that everybody you know has been trying to get you to face reality. The doctor wants you to look at the tests and take the medicine. The teachers in the school wanted you to take the test and look at the scores. We think that early on in your experience, you have given up your relationship with who you really are in order to find approval from others, and never really found it because you were looking for that love in all the wrong places. So then the next question is, well, isn't it set up a little screwy then? In other words, why would we set ourselves up for something that is so difficult? And we say, what's so difficult about wanting to feel good and finding a thought that does? We think it's just a complete misunderstanding. We think that you've been so convinced that the solutions that you seek are buried in the problem, that you've just become more problem-oriented than solution-oriented. And we think it's the misunderstanding that we think that you've forgotten that with the solution comes lightness of heart and ease, and with the problem comes heaviness of heart and struggle or stuckness. We think it is something just that simple. But you don't have that excuse anymore. You know too much. You now know about the vortex. You now know about real time. You now know about present reality, you see. And so you have the option now. You can think the less than good feeling thought or the better feeling thought. You have those options. And as you take it to heart and really in a determined way begin to apply yourself, you're going to discover improvement in your experience that will be obvious to everyone who has any association with you.
Thank you so much.
Yes, indeed.